Hey, I'm Ryan. I'm 24, still figuring stuff out. Graduated last spring with a degree in English, which basically means I'm overqualified for barista jobs and underqualified for everything else. And now I'm interning at this small community center just outside Philly. Mostly admin stuff, sorting files, answering emails, occasionally helping out with weekend events. It's nothing glamorous, but the people are good, and it pays just enough to keep my lights on. The center runs out of this big old house that was converted sometime in the 90s. You know the kind: wide wooden stairs, squeaky floors, that faint smell of old books and lemon cleaner. There's a kitchen in the back where the staff eat lunch, and upstairs there are a few rooms they use for workshops and meetings. That's where I met her. Her name's Melissa. She runs the adult literacy program on Saturdays. I didn't really know her at first, just a name on the schedule, someone who came in, did her thing, and left. But then one day the printer broke, and I had to run upstairs to fix it. She was standing there in the hallway, holding a stack of worksheets, looking half amused and half annoyed. I offered to help. She smiled, and I swear, for a second, everything else just kind of blurred out. She's older. Not like mom old, but seasoned, confident. She's probably in her late 30s, maybe early 40s. Wears these fitted cardigans and long skirts, always has a pair of glasses perched on her head. You could tell she was used to running things, but not in a cold way. More like she just didn't waste time pretending. Her voice had this low, warm tone to it, like she knew how to be calm even when everything else wasn't. After that, we started running into each other more. Sometimes in the kitchen when she was pouring tea. Sometimes in the copy room when she needed something unjammed. She always greeted me like I mattered, like I wasn't just the intern. And honestly, that alone meant a lot more than I ever expected. One day, she asked me to stay late to help move some boxes out of storage. I said sure. We spent about 2 hours up there sorting old books and binders. She told me stories about the early days of the center, how it was all chaos and good intentions. I listened. We laughed. There was this moment, I don't know. I was holding this dusty box and she was brushing hair out of her face, and our eyes just locked. It wasn't like a movie. There was no music swelling, but it was real. Something flickered between us, something we both felt and didn't name. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about her. The next couple of weeks, I found myself looking for excuses to go upstairs. I'd linger in the hallway when I heard her voice behind a door. Sometimes we'd run into each other in the kitchen, both reaching for the same mug or packet of tea, and she'd say something like, "You again," with a small smile, like the joke was just for me. It was never overt. No lines crossed. Just charged moments. Glances that lasted a little too long. Her hand brushing my arm when she passed by. And me, catching myself smiling for no reason after walking away from her. One afternoon, I was reorganizing the supply closet when she poked her head in. "You're always working," she said, stepping inside. I laughed. More like hiding. "This place is quieter than the main office." She leaned against the doorframe. "Smart. I used to do the same thing. Still do." I shrugged. "Guess we both like the quiet." She looked at me then. Not like someone looking at a coworker. Not like someone looking at a kid. Just looking. Like she saw something in me. "You have an old soul, Ryan," she said softly. I didn't know what to say. I just held her gaze, and the silence stretched between us. Not uncomfortable, just full. Full of something we weren't saying. A week later, it was raining. I remember that because the windows were fogged up, and the place smelled like damp paper and coffee. Most people had already left. I was wrapping up some filing when she came into the office, umbrella in hand, soaked from the knees down. "Car won't start," she said, dropping her bag on the table. I looked up. "Need a ride?" She hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yeah, of course." I drove a beat-up Corolla that rattled if you turned too sharply, but I cleaned out the passenger seat while she wrung water from her sleeves. The drive was maybe 15 minutes. Quiet at first. Then she asked about my favorite books. We talked about poetry, about being young and unsure and pretending not to be. By the time we pulled into her driveway, it didn't feel like I was dropping off a colleague. "Come in," she said. "It's still pouring, and you look half drowned." I hesitated. I really did. But then she smiled that tired smile, the one that said she wasn't just being polite. Inside, her place was warm and quiet. Books everywhere. A half-empty bottle of wine on the counter. A candle still flickering from earlier. She handed me a towel and told me to take off my shoes. We sat in the living room, legs stretched out, a blanket tossed between us. And then it happened. Not a kiss. Not even a touch. Just a moment. She looked at me and said, "You remind me of someone I used to know." "Is that a good thing?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Just looked at me like I was a question she didn't want to ask out loud. Then she shook her head. "No, it's better." I didn't sleep much that night. Not from regret. Not from excitement either. Just this restless knowing that something had shifted, quietly, definitely. The next time we saw each other, we acted normal. Talked about printer ink and scheduling. But when I handed her a folder, our fingers touched, just briefly, and we both paused. That pause said everything. We were on a line now. Maybe we'd been on it for weeks. And neither of us had stepped over. But we were both standing right at the edge, looking down. It happened on a Thursday. I remember that detail clearly because Thursdays were always quiet at the center. Fewer programs, less noise. I'd stayed late to finish some data entry, and when I finally stood to stretch my legs, the building felt almost deserted. I passed her room on the way to the kitchen. The door was cracked open. Lights low. She was sitting at her desk, glasses on, reading something. She didn't look up when I paused in the hallway, but I think she knew I was there. I kept walking. Made tea. Stood there staring out the rain-smeared window like I had nowhere else to be. A few minutes later, I heard soft footsteps behind me. "You stayed late too," she said, her voice low. I turned. "Yeah. Thought I'd finish up some reports." She nodded slowly. "Same. I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was both of us." 1 second we were standing by the counter, steam rising from our mugs, and the next, we were closer. Close enough that I could see the tired lines at the corners of her eyes. The way the lamplight turned the ends of her hair gold. "You okay?" I asked without really knowing why. She gave a soft, almost sad laugh. "That's a dangerous question." I didn't press. I just stood there, tea forgotten, waiting. And then she reached out. Just her fingertips, just brushing the sleeve of my sweater. "I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered. "But I don't want to stop." Her hand didn't fall away. And mine, it moved without thinking, resting gently over hers. She looked at me, really looked, and I swear I could feel something shift in the room. Like time paused. Like whatever rules we'd been following didn't apply anymore. I stepped closer. So did she. It wasn't a dramatic kiss. No music. No crashing into each other. Just quiet. Careful. Her lips touched mine like a question. And I answered. Not with words. Just with stillness. With presence. We didn't rush anything. There was a couch, and we sat, barely apart. Her hand still in mine. Both of us breathing a little too hard. "I shouldn't be doing this," she said. "Neither should I whispered. But neither of us let go. We sat there for maybe an hour. Talking, a little. Sitting in silence, mostly. Every now and then she'd lean into my side, or I'd run a hand through her hair, without even meaning to. When I stood to leave, I didn't know what to say. She walked me to the door, not the front one, but the side exit near the parking lot. Just before I stepped out into the rain, she touched my wrist, gently. "Ryan." "Yeah." "I'm not looking for anything. I just needed to feel something again." "I know," I said. And I did. That night, I sat in my car for a long time before driving home. The rain pelted the windshield, the wipers thudded back and forth. My tea had gone cold in the cup holder, and in my chest was this strange mix of dread and warmth. Guilt I couldn't name. Hunger I didn't want to admit. It wasn't just about attraction. It never had been. It was about the way she listened. The way she looked at me like I was someone worth pausing for. It was about the silences we shared. The kind that didn't ask for anything. Just let you exist, unjudged. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I stared at the ceiling, remembering the exact weight of her hand in mine. The next day, we didn't speak. Not a word. She passed me once in the hallway and gave a small nod. No smile. No tension. Just something quieter. But the next week, she stayed late again. And so did I. After that second night, things changed, but only behind closed doors. In the hallways, we stayed the same. Professional. Friendly. Almost too normal. But beneath the routine, something was happening. It became a pattern. Thursday evenings turned into late Fridays. Then Tuesdays. Sometimes I'd pretend to forget my bag just to circle back to the center. Sometimes she'd leave her office door slightly open. It wasn't constant. It wasn't every week. But when it happened, it felt like the world narrowed to just us. One night, I found her in the break room after everyone had left. She was sipping chamomile, staring at the wall like it was speaking to her. I asked if she was okay, and she just patted the chair beside her. I had a hard conversation today, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. A student told me she was quitting. Too overwhelmed. I'm sorry, I said. She nodded slowly. You try to help, and sometimes it's not enough. I didn't know what to say to that. So I reached out, rested my hand on hers. She turned it over, laced our fingers. I don't want to be alone tonight, she said. And I didn't go home. It wasn't about the rush. It was never fast, never careless. We'd sit for hours, just talking. Sometimes she'd read poetry aloud, real stuff, not the kind you memorize in school. Sometimes she'd ask about my life, and I'd tell her more than I meant to. She made space for things I didn't even know I was carrying. She told me about her divorce, how it wasn't loud or messy, just slow, a drifting apart, how she'd gotten used to silence, to dinners alone, to being the strong one because someone had to be. I used to think I needed permission to feel anything again, she said once. But I don't. Do I? No, I told her. You don't. And then there were the moments in between. In her car, after she dropped me off blocks away from my place. In the back hallway of the center, where we'd passed too close, her fingers grazing mine just long enough to remind us both. It felt like we were sharing a secret room inside the world. And when we were inside it, everything made sense. But outside, I started flinching at small things. When someone mentioned her in a meeting. When Dawn from IT joked that Melissa was everyone's favorite teacher. When she complimented someone else's work and I had to pretend it didn't sting. I kept thinking someone would notice. That we weren't as subtle as we thought. That we were one wrong glance away from exposure. She started pulling back a little. Not in affection and space. We'd go a few days without speaking. She'd cancel a late night, say she was tired, that she needed rest. I told myself it was fine. I had schoolwork. I had friends. But none of it felt right. None of it felt like her. Then, one night, I asked, "What are we doing?" We were sitting on her living room couch. A movie playing quietly. Her hand on my leg, but her gaze somewhere far away. She looked at me, and I could see the hesitation in her eyes. I don't know, she said. That's okay. I said. I don't either. But the truth is, I wanted to know. I wanted something I couldn't name. And I think she knew it. That's when the shift began, slow, almost invisible. The next few times we saw each other, she smiled less. Held me a little differently. Like she was already beginning to let go. And I just kept showing up. Hoping showing up would be enough to make it stay. The change didn't happen all at once. It was small things. A shorter hug. A missed text. Her smile not quite reaching her eyes. We still spent time together, but it wasn't the same kind of time. There was a pause in everything she did, like she was holding her breath through it all. One night, I asked her if she wanted to go for a walk. It was late, the air warm and still, the kind of night that begged for quiet conversations. She said yes, but I could tell she wasn't really there, not the way she used to be. We walked through her neighborhood, past the rows of quiet houses and porch lights glowing faint yellow. I reached for her hand, and she let me take it, but it felt like something had loosened in her fingers. Like she was already letting go before either of us had said anything. Halfway down the block, she stopped. "Ryan," she said, so softly I almost didn't hear her. "We should talk." I knew what was coming. I felt it in my chest before the words even formed. She turned toward me, her other hand in her coat pocket, not for warmth, just something to do, something to anchor her. "I don't regret anything," she said. "Not a second of it. But I can't keep pretending this doesn't have consequences." I nodded. "I know. I'm not just older," she said. "I'm in a different life. And you're still starting yours." "You think I don't know that?" I said, trying to smile. "You think I haven't felt it too?" She looked away, toward the shadows stretching across the pavement. "I think you're holding on to something that isn't meant to be held," she whispered. We stood in silence after that. Just two people under a street lamp. Not touching, not pretending. The breeze picked up, and she wrapped her arms around herself like she was trying to hide from the words she'd already said. "I'm sorry," she added. "I'm not," I said. She finally looked at me then. And maybe that was the hardest part. The way her eyes looked so tired, like she'd been carrying this ending for days. We walked back to her place without speaking. When we got to the door, she paused before unlocking it. "Do you want to come in?" she asked. I shook my head. "If I do, I won't leave." She nodded slowly, like that made perfect sense. And it did. She reached out and touched my cheek. Just once. Softly. Then stepped inside and closed the door. No final word. No promise of more. Just silence. The next morning, I stayed in bed until nearly noon. The city felt louder than usual, like everything was moving too fast. I kept looking at my phone, half hoping, half dreading a message that never came. I didn't go back to the center for a week. Said I was sick. They believed me. When I did go back, I took the long way to avoid her floor. I don't even know if she was in that day. I couldn't bring myself to check. I didn't delete her number. I didn't block her. But I didn't text either. I carried her around like something fragile in my pocket, afraid to drop it, but too scared to hold it again. Sometimes I caught myself standing outside the kitchen, wondering if she'd show up, cup of tea in hand, smile soft, like nothing had changed. She didn't, and I stopped expecting her to. I didn't leave the center right away. For a while, I tried to go back to normal, showing up on time, nodding through meetings, making coffee in the same old kitchen. But everything felt off. The same walls, the same floors, the same rooms. But something was missing, and I couldn't name it without breaking the silence we'd both chosen to keep. I saw her once, maybe 2 weeks after that walk. She was standing outside the building, talking to someone from the board, hair tied back, a scarf wrapped around her neck like armor. I stood at the window upstairs, watching them laugh at something. Her head tilted just slightly. Her smile came easily. It wrecked me more than I'd expected. I didn't say anything, didn't go out to say hi. I just turned and walked away. That was the last time I saw her in that space. 3 days later, I told the director I was done. My internship was supposed to end in May anyway, but I said something vague about needing to refocus, about other opportunities. He didn't ask questions, just thanked me and wished me luck. I packed my desk slowly. A coffee mug, a few stray pins, a copy of a poetry book she'd once mentioned liking forgotten until that moment, tucked in the bottom drawer. I stared at the title for a long time before placing it gently in my bag. I walked through the building one last time, past the door to her office, past the break room, the storage closet, the side exit. Every corner of that place held a memory. Every step felt like a quiet goodbye. When I got home that night, I didn't cry. I didn't write about it. I just lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, the way I used to when I was a kid and couldn't sleep after thunderstorms. It was over. Not with anger, not with drama, just quietly, like something that had never belonged in the light for long. For a while, I stopped going near that part of town. I deleted my notes about center projects. I buried myself in new work, tutoring, freelancing, late-night shifts at a bookstore just to stay moving. I dated a little. Nothing serious. Nothing that felt real. And still, I thought about her. Not every day, but enough. Whenever I saw a woman holding a cup of tea with both hands, or heard a line of poetry that made the room go still, or walked through a bookstore and caught that faint scent of old paper and perfume, she became something like a season in my life. A brief one, a necessary one, but a season all the same. I didn't reach out, and neither did she. Maybe because we both knew any word between us would open the door again. And this time, there'd be no stepping back. It wasn't closure. Not really. But it was a kind of peace. It had been just over a year. I was at a coffee shop downtown, one of those quiet ones with soft lighting and big windows, the kind that always smells like cinnamon and rain. I'd been meeting a client about a tutoring gig and stayed behind to finish my notes. The place was half empty. Rain pattered gently against the windows. Some slow piano track played over the speakers. That's when I saw her. She walked in wearing a gray coat, her hair damp from the drizzle. Same glasses. Same quiet calm in the way she moved. She didn't see me at first, ordered her drink, stood by the counter, eyes on her phone. I sat frozen, watching her. When she turned and saw me, her expression changed just slightly. Not shock, not discomfort, just recognition. That quiet softening of the eyes when you see someone you didn't think you'd ever see again. She walked over slowly. "Ryan," she said. "Hey." I managed, standing. "Mind if I sit?" she asked. I shook my head, motioning to the empty seat across from me. She placed her cup down carefully, like she was afraid of making too much noise. We didn't speak right away. Just looked at each other. Really looked. "You look good," she said. "You too," I replied. Another pause. "Have you been?" she asked. I shrugged. "Working. Mostly freelance now. Still reading too much poetry." She smiled, that familiar, half-curved smile I thought I'd forgotten how to see. "Still trying to fix the world with metaphors?" I laughed, softer than I meant to. "Yeah, something like that." We talked for a while. About safe things. Life. Work. Nothing heavy. But the whole time, it felt like something else was hovering between us, not regret, not longing, just memory, shared and unspoken. After a while, she glanced down at her tea. I think about those days sometimes, she said. Yeah, I said quietly. Me too. I'm not sure if I handled everything right, she added. But I don't regret it. I want you to know that. I nodded. I don't either. She looked at me then, and there was something different in her eyes. Not that quiet sadness I remembered. Something lighter. Something like acceptance. There was a version of me back then that was lost, she said. You found her, even if I didn't know how to keep her. I swallowed hard. You helped me find something too. She smiled again, smaller this time, more private. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, sighed, and stood. I should go, she said. But I'm glad we ran into each other. Yeah, I said. Me too. She hesitated, then stepped forward, reached out and touched my hand. Just once, just briefly. It was enough. I hope you're happy, Ryan, she said. Really? You too, I said. And just like that, she turned and walked out into the gray afternoon. Her coat fluttered behind her, and I watched her disappear into the crowd. I sat there for a while after she left, staring out the window, the rain still tapping the glass. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel bitter. I just felt still. Somewhere inside me, she still exists. In quiet mornings. In poems that don't quite rhyme. In moments that feel too full for words. We were never meant to last, but we were meant to happen. And I'll carry that, quietly, the way you carry a secret you no longer need to hide, but can't bring yourself to say out loud. Maybe that's what love looks like, sometimes. Maybe it's just the memory of her hand on mine.